Welcome back to Free Arts Academy. Today we'll be doing another episode of acrylic pouring on a budget using a kitchen strainer. For today's easy acrylic strainer pour, we use the colors metallic blue, which we mix with pouring medium, orange, which we mix with silicone oil, pink, tan, and white. First, let's start out with an acrylic pouring on a budget hack. You can stretch the life of your half-used bottles of paint by adding some silicone oil or pouring medium straight to the bottle, especially when it's got a cap like this and it pours really easily. We got this acrylic pouring oil from our Kef Artistry Kit, which we'll talk about more next time, so stay tuned. I just added a little squirt of oil and I'll mix it up here. So that I can be sure to remember what's inside of the bottle, I'll write a little something on top of the orange that I've added oil to, so I know what's up for the next acrylic pour. There's the acrylic pouring oil that came with the Kef kit, which we will talk about next week. Next will be the blue metallic paint, which is quite thick, so we will need to thin it down just a bit. I just got a new pack of 12 of these squeezy bottles you see here, the top's off of it, but you can see that there's notches on the side that lets you know how much acrylic pouring medium you've poured in there. I guessed and poured probably between 40 and 60 milliliters of this pouring medium before adding my paint, and I just added paint enough until I felt it would be thick enough and not too watery. So again, I really am sort of eyeballing it here and guessing. I don't have a scientific equation for you on mixing your acrylic pouring medium in, but I want to tell you to make sure you put the cap on well and fit the top of the nozzle with the cap as well so you don't get paint everywhere. But mix it up well like I'm doing here. Take a couple seconds if you need to. So here I've grabbed all the paints I'm going to be using. I've got everything mixed. I've got the orange with the oil. The blue is thinned down with acrylic pouring medium. The Craft Smart paint doesn't need to be thinned down, so that's why you see it in its regular bottle. So grab your strainer. It could be any type of strainer. And I just went freestyle here and started pouring the paint straight into the strainer. I wanted to see what would happen. It turned out pretty cool, so stay tuned. So you can see I did freestyle, but I also kept it pretty simple. I just grabbed my paint colors and layered them in as I twist the strainer back and forth with little motions. I'm trying to also move it around the canvas so it doesn't heavily pour in just one spot. This looks kind of crazy here, but I love the look of it. See what happens when you put the darker colors in? It just started to get so interesting. So I moved the drops all around, makes a cool pattern. This step is a time for patience. You can see that the design is getting really interesting, but you're also kind of multitasking as you move the canvas around and let your paint drip. Because we put the oil in the orange, the silicone oil, as we move the paint around, we're going to start seeing cells forming. And that'll become cooler as time goes on. So you can see I needed a little more paint on some of the edges, and I didn't want to fill the strainer again and dilute any color. So I started adding blues, knowing that that will kind of shift down to the bottom edge of this canvas. But I basically used my squeezy bottles of paint, different colors, kind of layered in there to get complete coverage of my canvas. So basically, I use my squeezy bottles to repeat more of the same until I feel I've got enough paint all over the canvas. And I'm being careful here to not put blue everywhere. I'm just kind of touching up spots on the canvas where it's a little bare. I used a gloved hand to kind of get the paint around the sides. And look how awesome this came out. It was simple and beautiful. So check it out. Because we use that silicone oil in the orange, all these cells start popping up and they look so cool. So this is how our painting turned out after a couple of days of drying. Be patient, let it dry completely, but check out all this cool blue glitter and all the orange cells that came out as it dried. We're here to help you become the happiest, most creative version of yourself. So please let us know, how did your painting come out and how can we help you in the future? See you next time.